What was your why are you booing me? I'm right moment? I'm gonna start this off by saying I'm terrible at most sports. Something I am good at, though, is tactics. Anyways, I live in a country that is not famed for baseball. In fact, baseball isn't really all that known here. But for some reason, my high school continues to this day to include baseball in its curriculum. Safe to say, none of the teachers or students had anything but a basic grasp of the game. However, thanks mostly to my granddad, people in my family actually played and coached baseball at points in their lives. And although I'd never really played, I knew how the game worked. But there is one moment that stands out. My class was playing baseball, and I was chosen to be the pitcher. Now, I can't throw very well, but I managed to strike out 3 people in the first inning, which I thought was pretty good considering we were losing. Well, my friends thought otherwise, and told I was cheating. They got the teacher involved, and I was banned from pitching for the rest of the match. I still don't understand. Once in middle school, the teacher said that carnivore dinosaurs like the T-Rex appeared in the Jurassic era. Then I said that the T-Rex was actually from the Cretaceous period. The teacher and some students said that I was wrong because it's called Jurassic Park and shit. On the next day, I brought some sources from the internet that agreed with me and the teacher corrected herself after doing some quick search on her own. But that didn't stop me from getting nicknamed Dinosaur in class. Years ago when I was in middle school, 2 mentally challenged kids got into a fight in class. It wasn't like a full-out fight, mostly pushing, but they definitely got into it with each other. Turns out kids heard about this, and they egged them on so that they would fight outside during lunch. I somehow found out about it, and when I got there, the 2 kids started to have a full-on fist fight. As all the kids surrounding them cheered, I rushed in to break them up. It was difficult breaking it up because the 2 kids really were going after each other, and no one else really helped to break it up. Eventually teachers caught wind and broke it up. As they did, kids started to literally boo me and curse at me for breaking up the spectacle. I was shocked. Don't get me wrong, I'm not some white knight and I totally get it that when you're a kid you love watching fights. Heck, even as adults we have some primitive innate entertainment by watching people duke it out. But there was something incredibly wrong about watching 2 mentally challenged kids being egged on to fight to the amusement of kids who were laughing at the situation. Over the summer before 2nd grade my father took me to the Detroit Historical Museum where I learned that Detroit, like Chicago, had a huge fire that destroyed much of the city. The first day or so of class, we had to tell everyone what we did during the summer. I share that we went to the museum and I learned about the fire in Detroit. The teacher told me that it was Chicago that had the fire and I was wrong. As a 2nd grader I didn't know how to handle an adult being wrong, so I started crying in front of the class. Later that day at recess some of the kids were teasing me for crying, so I hit one of them pretty hard. I got in trouble for starting a fight and was sent to the office. Things spiraled from there and that is how I got 5 to 7 on an Alabama chain gang. I was right though, damn it. I recently decided to retire from a somewhat dangerous profession in order to better look after my mental health. But a lot of people didn't like it and thought I owed it to them to keep working. When I suggested in high school that the science fair should be voluntary and not mandatory since 90% of the people in the class do their projects at the last minute with their parents doing almost all of it, the teachers and my classmates told me I was wrong and how valuable the science fair was. Lo and behold, the day the projects were due literally everyone was complaining as to why it was mandatory since they did their projects at the last minute with their parents doing all of the work. On our personal finance, an 18-year-old was asking if they should take out a $50 case student loan. They didn't need it to pay for college, parents paying, but interest was 1%. Everyone was saying that he should take the loan and invest it, since the market typically returns well above 1% and they could make money on it. I got downvoted to hell for saying that. At age 18. They have no clue if they will be responsible with that kind of money. And there is a big risk that they will end up spending a lot of it on things they don't need. People tore me apart for thinking that someone shouldn't make a great business decision for psychological reasons. But I saw plenty of people in college make the mistakes that I mentioned. Better to avoid the debt if they can. Edit. A couple people have asked about the legality of taking a student loan and investing it. This student was not based in the US, one of the Scandinavian countries, if I recall correctly. And I know that even in the US it is possible. Some of my grad school loans were designed to cover my living expenses. So the money was just deposited in my account, though way less than $50k. The only thing stopping me from investing it was not being able to afford to. 4th grade. We had our first laboratory class and we were learning about the lab instruments and basic safety. We were divided in around 4 tables with 6 students each. And each table had a flask with colored water in it. The teacher told us to by turns each one grab the flask and pretend to mix the liquid by spinning it. The first kid in my table grabs the flask but in a way that his hand covers the flask's mouth. I tell him such and that he should grab it by the neck sides instead of the mouth because if it was acid it could splash to his palm and hurt him. The other kids at my table started calling me a cribbleby saying that it obviously isn't acid and that it was only colored water like the one they use in my juice. And they all proceed to hold and mix it improperly. Eventually the teacher teaches us the correct way to hold flasks and mix them after seeing everyone grab them incorrectly. He tells us to grab them by the neck sides, just like I said, and to not cover the mouth with our hands because if it was real acid we could get seriously hurt, just like I said. I still get a bit salty when remembering that. When my grandmother fell over last month she was told at her age having her hip broken this bad would require surgery. We were all in the room. My mother said she can't have surgery. She'll die. I instantly say better off early than stretching it out. Grandma laughed. Nobody else did. 8th grade. Science class. Teacher was trying to be tricky or some shit, I guess. Gave us a word problem that was something like, if you dig a hole 3x3x4 in the ground, how much dirt is in the hole? I raised my hand and said nothing. There was no dirt in the hole. Her specific question was how much dirt was in the hole, not how big the hole was or what was left. I gave the right answer. There was no f-king dirt in the hole. She told me I was wrong. I pondered her answer. Decided it didn't make sense. Then raised my hand again. I was a studious nerd back then. I actually wanted to impress the teacher. I gave the same answer and my reasoning. She said how much dirt? No. She told me. I was wrong and stopped putting my hand up. The answer? Air. There was air in the hole. F-king air. I'm still pissed. It's 30 years later but I've still not forgiven her for embarrassing me and being wrong. Me. In science class at middle school. Saying that water expands when it's heated up. And everyone including my science teacher saying I was wrong and that water only expands when it freezes and becomes ice. Water has its maximum density at 4 degrees. It expands both cooling and heating from that point. Exactly. My teacher and everyone else thought it only expands when it turns into ice. If that were the case then when you boiled water all the steam would sink to the bottom until you had a giant steam bubble. I got downvoted like crazy for saying that a nurse told me that cold water and soap kills germs just as well as hot water when washing your hands. Linked some sources and everything. Then people started calling me a troll. If a drunk woman doesn't have the agency to consent to sex, then a drunk man doesn't have the agency to consent to sex either. Double quote. Does this mean 2 drunk people having sex is technically double rape? Depending on what laws you're going by. Yes. I think some countries consider only penetration to be RP for some reason. That concentration camps and extermination camps weren't the same thing under the Nazis. Americans liberated concentration camps but never an extermination camp as extermination camps were all in the East. I guess that really pissed off a lot of people when I said it. Was working for a political org during an election year. Got a file from another office and they wanted me to run my standard scripts to get them a final direct mail address file. Asked the other office if they wanted me to correct any of the addresses and they told me to absolutely not change any of their data because it was good. Told them that I really felt like their data needed to be checked and was told by their office, their management and my management that I should just do as I'm told. In the end, apartment building offices throughout the state received several hundreds of pieces of direct mail from the org. I knew their file didn't have apartment numbers listed for anybody, but I wasn't allowed to change it. A teacher in biology GCSE was discussing a food pyramid of a river habitat, and she claimed that 10 spray were at the top of the food chain. I pointed out, "Miss, I think that says 1 osprey." She snarled and said, "Fine. Everyone. Annan thinks he knows better than me. So now it's 1 spray." The whole class groaned and were muttering as they had to cross out what they'd written and rewrite it. And people on my table were giving me evils and telling me to be quiet. Utterly ridiculous that I even passed that subject. Grade 7, Canada. We were learning about medieval Japan and social studies class, basically history class. I made a comment that the Japanese bombed Pearl Harbor. A kid said it was the Germans and some people backed him up. Teacher said she forgot who bombed Pearl Harbor, but it wasn't the Japanese. If only smartphones existed back then. When I was in 1st grade, I said that electricity can be gained via water, hydropower. Everyone started laughing at me until my teacher said, "He is right." Double quote. The whole class went silent. A professor in undergrad asked what the orbit speed of the space shuttle is. I volunteered 18,000 miles per hour. It's 17.5 kmph, and he laughed and said absolutely not, and compared it to the speed of an airliner, 500 mph. Fucking idiot. In kindergarten I drew a picture of grapes and colored them green, and the other kids and the teacher caretaker were saying there are no green grapes, only purple. I had the same problem in kindergarten, but I colored an apple green and was told apples were red. I was a polite kid, so I was just all no, they can be green too every time the teacher tried to tell me they were red. My grandma had an apple tree that grew green apples. She used them in pies. I'd eaten those pies every single Thanksgiving and Christmas. When she picked apples, I was given them as an afternoon snack. In my kid mind, wasn't a matter of am I wrong? Are those not apples? Comma. It was more of a this teacher doesn't even know about grandma's apple tree. Double quote. I've had many booed moments, but this is a more recent one. In my science class we were watching a few documentaries about the US space program, and the topic of pollution came up with fuel consumption, and in the midst someone asked about where the parts of the rocket go once they are abandoned by the spacecraft. I commented how it just falls, and NASA pretty much just hoped that it didn't fall on people. One of the reasons they launch out of Florida or a Cape is so the parts end up in the water and not hitting civilization. But nobody believed me, since it would be then that NASA is polluting the ocean. In 2nd grade I joined the robotics club. One day we were learning about how an animal's bones affect the way animals move, and the teacher asked give me examples about animals with spines. I said snakes. She said snakes are like worms and lack spines. Me saying that Germany has a coastline, and everyone in class, including my teacher, disagreeing. Still remember it over 12 years later. I had basically the same thing happen when everyone else in my class insisted that Africa wasn't attached to any other land and was actually a giant island. My response was, then why did they need to build the Suez Canal? That seemed to stump them. I was working on a team of people building a race car. I told them a part that was technically strong enough should be built heavier to handle shock loads from bad track conditions. I got told I was a moron and it would be fine. Someone else ran the numbers and it would be fine. So I built the parts, put them on the car, and lo and behold it broke and the car ended up on its roof. You'd think that would be validation of my opinion, and people would agree that I was right. Not how it happened. I was the arsehole because I built them, so it was my fault. I used to be a hockey ref, so all the f-king time. I was once in a chorus in my community college and they had interesting social dynamics. It was primarily older white women, who were the alphas of the group. So we were doing a Latin American carol called Vamos Pastorcitas, and there was debate between them about the pronunciation of the C. I said the soft C is pronounced like an S. An old lady in the group said it was pronounced like the CH in cheese. I said you're thinking of Italian. In Spanish it's pronounced as an S, or in many European Spanish dialects like a th. The choral conductor went with her churchy old lady friend and they all pronounced it like Vamos Pastorcitas. It still haunts me to this day. In grade 6. We were doing a concert and Long Way to Tipperary was one of the songs. The teacher tried to get us to sing So Long to Leicester Square is Leicester. I told her how to pronounce it and she sneered at me. How do you know? Just dripping with condescension. She'd apparently forgotten that I'd just spent a year in England. And was taken aback when I answered because I was just there. Double quote. Thankfully she actually listened to me. But really. Her pronunciation destroyed the rhythm. Done. I'm an absolutely idiot. But I do have brief moments of intelligence, I swear. And one of them was my 3rd grade teacher tried to teach us fractions literally using the Monty Hall problem and jelly beans. And kept shaming me when I got it right. The Monty Hall problem is a bit of a mind CK. But it's essentially this. If you're on a game show with 3 doors, 2 of which have a goat behind it and 1 of which had a car, picking it right the first time has odds of 1/3. If the host opens one of the doors revealing one of the goats, and asks if you want to switch your door pick, staying with your original door has odds 1/3. But switching is 1/2. Shifting the entire equation. This is a minfuck but it's true. And I found out later that teacher kept making fun of me for saying it when weirdly I was actually right. Going to haunt me forever. 2 quick edits. 1. It's 2/3 RDS not 1/3. I remain an idiot. 2. The teacher didn't intentionally use the Monty Hall problem. They did it by accident by having jelly beans under paper cups. And would show us an empty paper cup to change the fraction to what she claimed would be 1, 2, 1, 2. She was wrong. And weirdly enough I was right. But she kept me up in front of the class to use me as an example of getting it wrong. Apostrophe. Class discussion on gay marriage in a sociology class in college. Circa 2003. I stated the scientific fact that homosexuality has been observed in over 1,500 species. And basically got booed, laughed at. It's easy to forget just how bad things were less than 20 years ago. I had a kid in my intro to ethics class in college suggest, with a straight face, that if we allow gay marriage then we might as well be allowing someone to marry their dog. The reaction from the class was evident, and this was in a rural part of Kentucky, and the professor was just like, I'll handle this one. Everybody calmed down. And proceeded to very politely and logically shut that bullshit down. Grade 12 law class. Trying to convince everyone in my class except one other person that cannabis had never killed anyone and would probably be legal within the next 15 years. I don't know what the deal was since almost everyone in the class smoked weed. But none of that matters because I live in Canada and weed was legalized within the next 15 years. So FCKM. In 5th grade we have a problem on math class with mirroring images. It asked if you are driving in a car and look in the rear view mirror, how would you see the ambulance emblem if an ambulance car was driving behind you? I said you would see ambulance because, at least in my country, those signs are intentionally put on mirrored. So you can see it normally in a mirror. Everyone said I was stupid, even the teacher. I still remember it after 8 years. The question in history class was who sacked Rome, and I raised my hand and answered the Visigoths. Everyone laughed along the lines of that's a ridiculous name, there's no such thing as the Visigoths, and that the Vandals sacked Rome. Which is where we get the word vandalism from. Well, yes. The Vandals did sack Rome. So did the Visigoths in the year 410. Well, if I was just getting booed I was having an easy night, and it was every Friday night from spring to fall. I've told this before in the past but I'll give the most condensed version I can for now. To start off, I drag race. Been racing since I was 13 and I'm 33 now. In my mid-20s I used to do these 100 FT drags held at a local circle track. In the area there's about 2-3 circle tracks within 45 minutes of each other, and the closest drag strip is over 2 hours away and in another state, so not really anyone knows what they are doing and only know what they saw on TV on Street Outlaws and whatnot. This includes the organizer and promoters of these races, yet it's a bracket race, which is a handicap form of drag racing where it's more about consistency and driver's skill than whoever has the faster car. Basically you can race your daily driver and have the same chance of winning as someone who's built a hot rod. Over the course of 5-6 years I'd race my street car for fun and got a reputation for winning almost every week and winning the championship each year. This did not sit well with the fans that came out to watch BC. Nobody expects a bone stock 07 Chevy Cobalt to win in a drag race versus anything. So naturally everyone thought I was cheating and I'd get booed every night. I could write stories about PPL booing me, threatening me, throwing stuff at me, confronting me at the track and in public wishing to do me harm. The organization made a rule directed at me to make it illegal to hit the brakes, just in my class, before the finish line in hopes it would mess me up. It didn't. I eventually got sick of it and stopped going and moved away from the area since then, but they stopped doing the races not long after that anyways. I said on a thread a few weeks ago that you should be cautious of what you see and believe on Reddit when it comes to matters concerning the Chinese, because China has invested so much in it. I was downvoted to oblivion and got an angry comment. Is this what Jesus felt like?